She walks through the front door after a long, exhausting day. All she wants is to unwind, maybe enjoy a quiet evening. But as she steps outside, ready to breathe in that fresh evening air, she stops, because there, in her backyard, are complete strangers. They're lounging by her pool, sipping drinks, laughing like they own the place. For months, Olivia tried to be the bigger person. She hoped it would stop, that they'd get the hint. But when they didn't, she made a decision that would change everything. Olivia Carter wasn't the type to pick fights with the neighbors. She wasn't nosy, didn't peer through her blinds at all hours, and certainly wasn't the kind to call the cops over something petty. She had always valued community, waving at joggers, exchanging small talk at the mailbox, even leaving baskets of homegrown peaches on the porch of the elderly couple next door. But respect? That was something she refused to compromise on. And lately, it felt like no one in her neighborhood had any. It started small. In early June, she began noticing damp footprints on her back porch in the mornings. At first, she figured it was an animal, maybe a stray dog lapping at the pool. That was until she found the half-empty soda bottle floating in the deep end. Then came the towels, strangers' towels, draped over her patio chairs like they belonged there. Olivia brushed it off at first. Maybe some neighborhood kids had gotten mixed up, thinking it was a community pool. But then, one evening, just before dusk, she caught them 3 teenagers splashing and laughing in her pool, completely unfazed by the fact that they were trespassing. Olivia didn't scream, didn't lose her temper. Instead, she slid open the glass door and stepped onto the deck. The second they spotted her, their faces drained of color. "Oh, we thought no one was home," one of them stammered, scrambling to get out. Olivia crossed her arms. "That's the problem, isn't it?" They bolted without another word, leaving behind their soaking wet towels and an open bag of Cheetos that had spilled all over her deck. She spent the next 20 minutes fishing soggy crumbs out of the water, muttering under her breath. She assumed that would be the end of it, that they'd learned their lesson. She was wrong. By the following week, things had escalated. Now, it wasn't just teenagers sneaking in after dark. It was whole families, parents, kids, even grandparents treating her backyard like some kind of community pool. Olivia would step outside to find inflatable rafts bobbing in the water, snack wrappers littering her patio table, and a lineup of discarded flip-flops along the edge of her deck. She tried to handle it diplomatically. She taped polite notes to the gate. "Private property, do not enter." She even had a few conversations with parents in the neighborhood, gently but clearly making it known that she wasn't comfortable with uninvited guests. It didn't make a difference. One afternoon, she stepped outside and froze. A woman, a complete stranger, was sprawled across one of her patio chairs, sunglasses on, scrolling through her phone while her kids screamed and splashed in her pool. Olivia walked up to her, calm but firm. "Excuse me, you're in my backyard." The woman barely looked up. "Oh, I know. The kids just wanted to cool off. We'll be out soon." Olivia's jaw tightened. "That's not the point. You didn't ask." Finally, the woman lowered her sunglasses, squinting at Olivia like she was the one being rude. "It's just a pool," she said with a shrug. "You're not even using it." Something inside Olivia snapped. The audacity. The entitlement. As if her space, her property, was somehow up for grabs just because she wasn't out here every day. She took a slow, deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "It's my pool, and I'd like you to leave." The woman scoffed but started gathering her things, calling for her kids with an exaggerated sigh. "You really don't have to be so uptight," she muttered under her breath. Olivia stood her ground, watching as they sauntered toward the gate like they were the ones being inconvenienced. She had tried being polite. That was about to change. Olivia didn't respond. She didn't have to. She just stood there, arms crossed, watching as the woman and her kids lazily gathered their things and slipped through the gate, the same gate they had left wide open, like they were planning to come right back. That was the moment Olivia knew. Being polite wasn't going to work, and if she didn't do something fast, things were only going to get worse. But Olivia had a plan. And soon, her neighbors were going to deeply regret taking advantage of her kindness. She tried everything, and she meant everything. First, she put up a larger sign on the fence, this time in bold red letters. Private property, nitrogen monoxide trespassing. Someone ripped it down within 2 days. Fine, she installed a new lock on the gate. The next morning, she found it hanging open broken. All right. She even called the non-emergency police line, hoping an officer's presence might at least deter them. When the officer arrived, he barely gave her a second glance. "It's a civil matter, ma'am. If you catch them in the act, you can file a report." Catch them? Wasn't that the problem? What was she supposed to do? Spend her afternoons lurking behind the curtains, waiting for the next entitled family to waltz in like they owned the place. She was 69 years old. Not a security guard, but her patience? That was running out. Fast. That evening, Olivia sat on her porch, watching the sunset, trying to shake off the frustration. Maybe she was overreacting. Maybe she just needed to let it go. Then movement. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw something shift across the fence. A boy, no older than 10, climbing over with the ease of someone who had done it many times before. He landed with a soft thud, glanced around, then whistled. 2 more kids followed. Olivia's fingers tightened around the armrest of her chair. Unbelievable. Olivia cleared her throat loudly. The kids froze mid-step. "You might as well go ahead and finish what you're doing," she said, her voice sharp, "since you clearly think you live here." The smallest one, maybe 7 years old, actually had the nerve to smile. "Our mom said it's fine," he chirped. Olivia narrowed her eyes. Did she now? The oldest one, probably the ringleader, shifted uncomfortably. "We'll just be a minute." "No," Olivia said, pushing herself up from her chair. "You'll leave, now." For once, they actually listened. The boys scrambled back over the fence, disappearing into the neighbor's yard. But Olivia didn't feel triumphant. She felt angry. Not at the kids. They were just doing what they had been allowed to do. It was the parents, the ones who should have known better. The same ones who had ignored her notes, brushed off her complaints, and treated her property like it was their right. But Olivia wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. Because the real breaking point was still coming, and after that, there'd be no going back. The heat that day was unbearable, the kind that made the air feel thick, pressing down on everything. Olivia had spent the morning running errands, picking up groceries, and really trying to ignore the irritation festering in her chest. All she wanted was to come home, unload her bags, and sit in the shade with a cold glass of lemonade. But the moment she pulled into her driveway, she knew. Peace was not on today's agenda. Loud music, laughter, splashing. The unmistakable sound of children shrieking with joy. Olivia's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She stared at her house, her backyard, her space, and yet, through the gaps in the fence, she saw it. Dozens of people. Not just a few kids sneaking in for a quick dip. Full families. There were coolers lined up along Olivia's patio, as if someone had organized a picnic. A grill was smoking. Pool floats bobbed in the water. Some occupied by parents who looked far too comfortable. 2 at home. And right in the middle of it all, the same woman. The one Olivia had confronted weeks ago. Reclining on one of Olivia's patio chairs, sipping from a plastic cup like this was her own personal backyard retreat, Olivia sat in her car for a moment. Just breathing. This wasn't just disrespectful. This was brazen. She grabbed her grocery bags, took her time walking up the steps, and when she pushed open her back door, NOTA single, person, even, noticed. And that was the part that stung the most. Not the music, not the mess, not even the kids trampling over her flower beds. It was the complete lack of acknowledgement, as if she was the outsider. She set her bags down with more force than necessary. The sound wasn't enough to break through the chaos outside. So she stepped forward until she was standing right at the edge of her patio. "Excuse me." No one turned. She took another step, her voice louder. I said, "Excuse me." Finally, a few heads turned. The music kept blaring, but at least some people had the decency to look startled. The woman in the chair? She sighed, setting down her drink as if she was the one being inconvenienced. "Oh, hey, Olivia." Olivia stared. "Hey," that's all she had to say. Olivia looked around at the strangers in her backyard, still floating, still eating, still acting like nothing was wrong. And just like that, something inside her snapped. "You need to get out. All of you." The woman sat up, adjusting her sunglasses. "Come on, it's just a little fun. No harm, no foul." Olivia let out a short, humorless laugh. "No harm? You broke my lock. You ignored my signs. You treated my home like a public park." The woman shrugged. "It's a hot day." Olivia's pulse pounded in her ears. She turned to the others, her voice sharp, commanding. "I'm not asking again. Get out." Finally, people started moving. The kids climbed out of the pool, towels dragging behind them. The adults, grumbling but at least moving, began packing up their coolers, tossing plastic cups into trash bags. As the crowd filtered out, Olivia stood her ground, watching, waiting. She knew this wasn't the end of it. She knew even as the last person walked out and the gate clicked shut behind them. The disrespect wouldn't stop here, but Olivia had already made up her mind. This was the last time anyone would set foot in her pool. And tomorrow? She was going to make damn sure of that. Olivia barely slept that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene over and over. The way they had laughed off her anger, dismissed her boundaries, acted like she was being unreasonable for wanting control over her own home. She had tried. She had really tried. Politeness, warnings, even getting the police involved. Nothing worked. And that's when it hit her. The problem wasn't just the neighbors, it was the pool. As long as it was there, sparkling, inviting, a symbol of summer indulgence, people would keep coming. They'd keep finding excuses, keep ignoring her, keep taking, so she'd take something from them. By morning, Olivia had already made the call. The guy on the other end of the line sounded confused. "You want to get rid of it entirely?" "That's right," Olivia said. A long pause. "Ma'am, do you know how much work that's going to be?" For the first time in days, Olivia smiled. "More than breaking my lock? More than ignoring my signs? More than treating me like I don't exist?" Another pause, then a chuckle. "Fair enough, we can start tomorrow." That was all she needed to hear. Olivia spent the rest of the day sitting on her porch, sipping her coffee, waiting. She didn't have to wait long. By noon, her neighbor, the same woman who had lounged in her chair like she paid the mortgage, leaned over the fence. "You're getting work done?" Olivia nodded. "Sure am." The woman squinted, spotting the orange tape marking the edges of the pool. "What kind of work?" Olivia took another sip of coffee, didn't say a word. By afternoon, the questions turned into rumors. Someone saw her talking to a contractor. Someone else noticed a cement truck scheduled for delivery, and by nightfall, the woman from next door finally came knocking. Olivia opened the door, keeping her expression neutral. "You're not actually," the woman hesitated. "You're not getting rid of the pool, are you?" Olivia tilted her head. "Why do you care?" The woman scoffed, crossing her arms. It's such a nice feature. A lot of us enjoy it." Olivia let that sit for a moment. "A lot of us. Not you. Not me. US. Exactly," Olivia said finally. "And that's the problem." She shut the door before the woman could reply. She knew this decision wasn't going to be popular. She also didn't care. Because by this time tomorrow, Her backyard would no longer be their playground, and she was going to make damn sure of that. By sunrise, the real show had begun. The first truck pulled up just after 8, a flatbed carrying demolition equipment. Half an hour later, a second one arrived. This time, with a crew of workers in reflective vests and hard hats. They moved with purpose in loading tools, prepping the site. Olivia sat on her porch, arms crossed, watching. She wasn't the only one. At first, it was just a few neighbors, then more. People peered out from behind curtains. Some lingered in driveways. Others stood in their yards, pretending to water their grass just to get a better look. And then, the woman from next door appeared. She stormed across the lawn, her sandals slapping against the pavement. What the hell is this? Olivia didn't even blink. Construction. The woman's voice pitched higher, disbelief dripping from every word. You're actually doing it? Yep, you're really tearing out the pool. Olivia took a slow sip of her coffee. I thought you said it was just a pool. The woman's jaw tightened. You're overreacting. Olivia just smiled. Maybe, but she didn't move, didn't argue, didn't explain herself, because the decision had already been made. And now? Now it was too late to stop it. The first sound of machinery roared to life. A jackhammer cracked through the morning silence, splitting the tile into jagged pieces. The woman flinched. The other neighbors watched, stunned. Someone murmured, "She's actually doing it." Damn right, she was. The destruction was quick, merciless. By mid-morning, the once pristine blue water had been drained, leaving behind an ugly, empty crater. The workers wasted no time. Shoveling, breaking apart, hauling debris away. Olivia watched every second of it, and she savored it. By noon, the complaints started trickling in. Someone, probably the woman next door, called the HOA. Didn't matter. Olivia had checked the rules. Nothing prohibited her from removing a pool on her own property. Another neighbor had the nerve to say, but that pool was a staple of the community. Olivia raised an eyebrow. Funny, I don't remember putting in a community pool. And just like that, the argument died. Because what could they really say? They had trespassed. They had ignored her warnings. They had pushed her too far. And now? Now they were paying the price. By sunset, the final truck rolled in. And instead of a pool, Olivia's backyard was now a smooth, flat slab of fresh concrete. No more water, no more lounge chairs, no more pool parties, and most importantly, no more uninvited guests. But Olivia wasn't done yet, because the best part was still coming. The next morning, Olivia stepped outside with her coffee, took a deep breath. For the first time in months, her backyard was quiet. No splashing, no music, no uninvited guests. Just her, exactly the way it should be. She ran her hand over the smooth concrete, still fresh from the day before. Some people would have seen an empty space, a loss. But Olivia? She saw freedom. Of course, the neighbors weren't happy. Some still grumbled when they saw her. Others threw pointed looks in her direction, as if trying to shame her for what she had done. It didn't work, because, funny enough, no one actually had the guts to say anything to her face. They all knew. They knew they had crossed a line. And they knew deep down that they had only themselves to blame. A few days later, Olivia was planting roses along the edge of her new patio when she heard someone approach. She didn't have to look up to know who it was. The woman from next door cleared her throat. So, what are you gonna do with it? Olivia dusted the soil off her hands, then stood up. Haven't decided, she said, glancing over the space. Maybe a garden, maybe a nice fire pit, whatever I want, really. The woman shifted her weight. You know, the kids are really disappointed. Olivia turned to her, expression unreadable. Oh, she said, voice even. And tell me, where were those kids when my signs were ignored? When my locks were broken? When my space was treated like a public playground. The woman didn't answer. She just sighed, shook her head, and walked away, like Olivia was the one in the wrong. But Olivia wasn't buying it. She watched her go, then turned back to her work. No anger, no resentment, just clarity, because now she understood. People will take as much as you let them. They will push. They will overstep. And they will test how much they can get away with. And if you don't stop them, they'll keep going. For months, Olivia waited for them to respect her space. She hoped they would. But in the end, she had to take that respect back for herself. She knelt down, pressing a rose bush into the soil, a small smile tugging at her lips. She might not have a pool anymore. But what she had now was peace, was freedom, was hers, and only hers. Tell your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more unbelievable real-life stories.